He was pushed around every day at school, and even the girl he liked ended up with the bullies. But life was cruel. He had a fateful encounter with the infamous Truck Kun. And just like that, he was reincarnated as Lucas Ryan in a world where mages are worshipped and martial artists are despised. Yet in this world where magic reigns supreme, Lucas turned out to be a genius at the academy. On the magical continent of Arcanas, a highly anticipated annual event was about to begin. An official announced to the crowd that today was the day of the Divine Blessing ceremony. Children under the age of 6 would offer their most precious possessions to the gods. If the offering was accepted, a divine messenger would be sent down. He explained that this spirit would sense the child's magical affinity, giving them the chance to become a mage. A young boy asked his mother if he could learn magic by offering a piece of candy, but she figured it had to be expensive jewelry like the nobles brought. One noblewoman flaunted her precious gemstone, claiming that the more valuable the offering, the higher the chance of receiving a blessing. A man in the crowd mentioned he'd heard the Ryan family spent their entire fortune on this blessing. Another added, it would be a real tragedy if they weren't blessed after all that. Holt Ryan, the head of the family, knew he had gambled his family's entire future on this. He was certain his children, Leica and Louis Ryan, would receive top-tier blessings. The master of ceremonies then called the next person on the list. He loudly announced the name Julia Ryan. The young girl approached the altar and placed a small crown upon it. A magical formation appeared on the ground, and the MC wondered what it could be. He questioned if this was the blessing of Kahai, the god of thunder. It was a level 7 blessing. 12 years had passed since anyone had witnessed a blessing of such a high level. Her father celebrated his daughter's incredible talent, proclaiming that their family had been chosen by the gods. When the girl came to, she had no idea what happened, and her mother remarked that the offering didn't seem valuable enough to cost a family fortune. One of the guests reminded another that there was still one child left who was supposedly offering a legendary treasure. Holt knelt before Lucas, telling him he was next, and the boy nodded. An older man handed him a sword to offer to the gods. A murmur went through the crowd as they felt the immense energy radiating from the blade. A divine figure materialized behind the boy, identified as Vulcanus, the god of fire. His little sister wished her big brother good luck. The MC realized that by offering something so priceless, the head of the Ryan family was betting everything on this boy. Lucas walked toward the altar to make his offering. Outside, the sky began to change colors and people looked on in wonder. The boy's father had never seen anything like it, and wondered if this was a level 9 blessing, as the youth stood in the center of the altar. The sword began to float in midair as the boy watched. Then he felt an intense energy surge into his hand as a brilliant light spread up his arm, completely engulfing it. When the light faded, another figure was holding the sword. Outside, someone commented that the sky had returned to normal. Holt questioned if the blessing was over and where the divine spirit was. His youngest daughter could only stare at the altar. Lucas was suddenly thrown back from the altar, falling to the ground where he remained completely still. The MC and his family cried out his name in alarm. His parents rushed to his side, desperately begging him to wake up, but the MC announced that the god had rejected him. He declared that Lucas Ryan had been abandoned by the progenitor of magic himself. As his family offered their support, a light from the fire god's realm descended, but it was aimed at someone else. A voice tinged with discontent echoed through the space. The entity was annoyed that the Ryan family had the audacity to offer an ancient power. He glared at the blade and swore he would never forgive them for this slight. His servants praised his decision to simply reject the child's offering. One spirit noticed an otherworldly presence had slipped into the boy's body and asked if that should be removed as well. The fire god replied that there was no need to waste time on a mere being from another world. He turned his attention to the other offering, calling it a fine piece. A soul suddenly found itself enveloped in energy. From within it, an eye opened. In the celestial source realm of the martial god, a man emerged. He was focused on his goal. With a single fluid movement, he broke through a barrier and advanced through the cosmos. A cosmic creature appeared, addressing him as the power source governing this world. The man simply asked if the creature intended to block his path to a higher dimension. The cosmic being attacked with a blast, trying to contain him, but the man pressed forward, unleashing his own energy directly at it. The impact easily overwhelmed the creature. He watched as the being dissipated into a large vortex. He now stood before a newly formed portal. The martial god remarked that the power source was nothing special. A small creature flew toward him, calling him Lord Martial God. He snatched it out of the air, asking why his attendant spirit was getting in his way. He then sensed that his old partner, Reku, was no longer present. The spirit showed him an image, making him wonder what was happening on the Arcanus continent. He recalled that 1,000 years ago, martial arts were much stronger, but now the fire god Volcanus was the one everyone worshipped. The spirit commented on the current state of affairs. The god claimed that spreading martial arts was a heavy burden and that he had no interest in developing them further. Yet he still acknowledged his duty to pass them on. He mused that a small being like the one he saw would have to dedicate himself constantly to training. His presence then dissolved into a point of light. Elsewhere, a new consciousness awoke, completely confused. Opening his eyes, he wondered what that was all about. He saw himself surrounded by several identical figures, all while he was still lying in bed. The creatures introduced themselves as Mars, the martial god, and announced they were there to grant him a blessing. They continued to float and circle around the boy's bed. Then they all flew straight toward him, and the boy flinched as they approached. A beam of light shot out and struck him. He received the level 9 martial god's blessing, and the limit on his martial arts training was removed. Sitting up in bed, the boy wondered what all that martial god and level 9 stuff was even about. He remembered the spirits he saw were incredibly powerful. He looked down at his own hands, wondering what on earth was happening. Then he recalled the accident and questioned why he was here. Suddenly, the memories of a boy named Lucas Ryan flooded his mind. He wondered if the gods were just messing with him. Realizing he was in a brand new life, he feared this one was going to be tough. He thought of his mother and Isusa, who would now have to live on without him, but he still didn't get what this martial arts blessing was supposed to mean. A lollipop suddenly fell to the floor right beside the bed. The small sound made him look toward the door. A little girl entered the room calling for her big brother. She ran right up and gave him a big hug on the bed. The girl said she heard he would take a long time to wake up and was very worried. He comforted her, telling her not to cry anymore and recognizing her as Julia Lucas's sister. He thought of Isusa, who must have been deeply shaken by what happened. He then decided that in this life he would protect the people he holds dear. Counting on the martial god's help, an angelic statue stands, prominently on an altar in the center of a grand hall. Suddenly, a dark liquid begins to weep from the statue's eyes. The stone figure cries, the dark substance offering up its stained hands. A woman remarks that the detestable man's presence has finally vanished. She wonders if he died or simply left this world. Clutching a symbol on her chest, she laments how little power she has left. The woman then rises from amidst a dark substance. She declares that with him out of the way, this world will soon be theirs. 9 years later, peace reigns at the Ryan family estate. Lucas notices the weather has cleared up and figures Julia's training must be over. He decides to go meet her, but a massive thorn bush is blocking his path. Suddenly, the thorns wrap around him, hoisting him into the air. Lucas wonders who would pull the same prank on him again. He turns and identifies the culprit as Jeremy. Jeremy Ryan greets him as Lucas, the child abandoned by the gods. Behind him, a maid wonders aloud why Lucas hasn't been kicked out of the family yet. Jeremy reminds Lucas that this backyard is reserved for the family's mages. He suggests that maybe Lucas will learn his lesson if he's taught the hard way. But Lucas warns him that his sister is just finishing her magic training and will be back any second. He tells Jeremy to let him go unless he wants to get blasted by her lightning. Jeremy calls him a coward for hiding behind his sister, stammering that he's not afraid of a little lightning. At that exact moment, a bolt of lightning strikes him square in the chest. The maid screams for her master, who is now lying on the ground smoking. Lucas turns to see Julia approaching the gate. Young Julia warns Jeremy that she won't go easy on him if he ever bullies her brother again. She puffs out her cheeks in a huff. Then she turns to her brother and says she'll get those thorns off him right away. Once he's down, Lucas pats his sister's head, and she smiles up at him. He keeps his hand on her head and asks Jeremy if he's finally learned his lesson. Jeremy just stares, unable to respond. Without a second thought, Jeremy turns and flees with the maid. Lucas comments on how fast Jeremy is running, noting that Julia went easy on him with that last shock. Julia asks why he didn't fight back since he's strong enough to defeat Jeremy himself. He reminds her that his true strength has to be a secret between them. He pats her head again, saying she's there to protect him, and she happily agrees. As they walk toward the mansion, he reflects on the 9 years that have passed since he reincarnated into Lucas's body. He recalls the day he first woke up. When Lucas's father, Hall, came to visit, Lucas was sure he'd be kicked out for failing to meet expectations. Instead, Hall embraced him, saying he was just happy that Lucas had woken up safely. Even though he leads an order of knights and is rarely home, Hall is a good father who genuinely cares for his children. When Hall found out Lucas had started training in martial arts, he immediately sent a letter filled with useful information. The letter explained that the archives held ancient martial arts books that could help. Lucas descends a dark corridor, lighting the way with a candle. Thanks to that letter, he was able to set a certain audacious plan in motion. Back in the present music, a maid calls out for young Master Lucas outside the mansion. One maid wonders where he went, but the other says not to worry. Music, he'll be expelled soon anyway. Suddenly, the two maids are startled by something they see. One asks if the other felt the ground shaking. Her companion suggests it might just be someone practicing earth magic. Meanwhile, deep within an underground cave, a fist smashes through a stone wall. Lucas steps back from the rubble, wiping sweat from his face. He looks at the passage he's dug. It should be enough to reach the archives. He spent 6 months, digging to build this secret training ground, divided into a study area, a training zone, and storage. He had to improvise a cheap tub for a bathroom since he'd spent all his money outfitting the other sections. He's trained here in secret every day since finishing it. Currently, he's relaxing in a medicinal bath, claiming it's the most efficient way to train in martial arts. It's been 3 years since he started training with the chaotic tempering technique he found in the archives. He rises from the tub, revealing that now magic attacks of level 5 or lower don't even leave a scratch on him. With his defense finally taking shape, he turns his focus to offense. Sword in hand, he approaches a training dummy and executes a rapid series of strikes with the broadsword. He also trains with a long spear. Finally, he steps back from the training dummy, which is now completely destroyed. Having reached level 4 in his spear technique, he decides to practice his fist techniques a bit more today. His skills have steadily improved over the last 9 years, but one thing is still bothering him. According to the books, martial artists hit a wall that can only be broken by achieving enlightenment. But this enlightenment is so difficult to attain that most people just give up. That's why so few people train in martial arts. He turns to a large training barrel and declares that he's different. He delivers a powerful punch straight into the barrel, causing it to completely explode on impact. He has reached level 5 in his fist technique. His levels just keep rising with no apparent limit. He realizes this must be what's called a divine blessing. Back in his room, he remembers Hall is returning home tonight for a family dinner. He walks down the hall toward the large dining room doors. Upon opening them, he finds his entire family already seated at the table. Hall greets him, mentioning it's been 6 months since they last saw each other, and invites him to sit. Hall informs Lucas that the Allen Magic Academy is opening a special martial arts department and that he has already enrolled him. He acknowledges that martial arts are difficult, but knows Lucas can succeed. He warns that the entrance exam is next week. Lucas simply thanks his father. Lucas reflects that he needs to get stronger, but he can't stand out too much, or else he'll cause trouble. Julia then raises her hand and tells their father she wants to attend the Allen Magic Academy with Lucas. Hall explains it's a good goal, but she's only 11. Julia retorts that the elite class has no age restrictions. She reveals she has actually already received an offer for the elite class. Hall just stares at her, pondering this information. He comments to his wife that Julia's reputation as a genius must have reached the academy and that a great mage might be born into the family. While Julia giggles, Lucas comments that it's amazing, leaving Jeremy visibly annoyed. A relative says they will pray for both to pass, but Jeremy asks why Lucas is getting special treatment. Suddenly, Jeremy is startled by a voice telling him to calm down. A hand touches his face, and the voice repeats that there's no need to worry. Jessica Ryan, Jeremy's mother, reassures him, saying it's not guaranteed that Lucas will pass the exam anyway. A week later, the day to leave for the Magic Academy arrived. The family said their goodbyes at the estate gates. Julia's mother told them to take care. She promised to visit soon with their favorite pudding. Then she reminded them not to forget the lucky coin their father had given them. The coin was from the Buin dynasty 10,000 years ago. Their father had won it after subjugating a magical beast. Hall showed them the coin. He explained that the engraved face was Mars, the first emperor. Lucas recognized him instantly. He told them to always keep it with them as a lucky charm. Lucas held the coin tight. He felt lucky to have a good family in both his lives. With a final wave, Julia said goodbye and they finally set off. A few hours later, the coachman announced the sunset. He said they should camp in the clearing ahead. Around the campfire, a man named Forden explained their schedule. They would arrive at Allen Academy by nightfall the next day. Julia asked Mr. Forden if there was anything interesting in Daku City. He nodded, mentioning the annual Magic Dodgeball tournament. Mr. Bach-Forden added that the city was also famous for being a gastronomic hub. Lucas noticed his sister Julia was already drooling. Suddenly he sensed movement from the darkness of the forest. He detected 12 horses and 13 people approaching fast just 2 kilometers away. He asked Forden if there were bandits in the area. The man replied that the chances were low. His chaotic tempering technique had given him sharpened senses. He was certain he wasn't imagining things. With only 5 of them and a child in the group, he knew they needed to be careful. He stood up and warned them. A mysterious group was coming quickly, and they needed to get into formation. Forden couldn't hear anything and wondered what young Master Lucas was talking about, but he quickly changed his mind. He ordered the guards to ready their weapons immediately. He didn't know where Lucas got the information, but decided it was better to be safe than sorry. Just then, a group of bandits on horseback charged through the forest. The guards spotted the riders, confirming their presence. The bandit leader saw them. He cheered that the boss was right about the place being full of nobles. One of them commented that the little girl and the boy next to her would fetch a good ransom. Forden confronted them. He asked if they had any idea what happens to those who mess with nobles. The bandit leader simply ordered his men to attack everyone except the 2 children. The bandits advanced. One of the guards ran to provide cover for Mr. Fordon. A bandit charged on horseback, raising his sword to strike, but a guard intercepted him, hitting him with a spear. The bandit leader watched his companion fall. Ford leaped into battle, his sword a blur, telling Miss Julia to leave everything to him. With a single powerful blow, he rushed forward and took down several bandits at once. He turned and shouted for young Master Lucas to grab Julia and run. Hearing the attack, Lucas whipped his head around. One of the bandits had launched a fire spell at the remaining guards. The leader realized they had a mage, which caught Ford completely off guard. He yelled for the 2 of them to run into the forest as he cut down another enemy, but a bandit ambushed him from behind. Lucas turned just in time to see the blow land and screamed Ford's name. The man staggered to his feet, wounded and completely surrounded. The bandit leader swore to burn him alive for what he did to his comrade. Ford readied himself, declaring he would protect the young master and lady, even if it cost him his life. Lucas knew Ford was only a level 2 martial artist. He couldn't possibly beat a mage. Lucas had wanted to keep his real strength a secret, but that was no longer an option. He remembered how Ford had been kinder to him than anyone else. The man was practically family, and he couldn't just stand by and watch him get killed. He urged Julia to hide, then knelt down and told her he was going to help Ford. His sister agreed, simply asking him to be careful. Lucas dashed toward the fight while Ford parried another blow from the bandit. He fell to his knees, struggling just to stay upright. The bandit leader raised his sword for the final strike, but suddenly the other attackers simply collapsed. Ford looked back completely stunned as the remaining bandits wondered what in the world had just happened. 2 swift projectiles slammed into 2 of the bandits. Then a full barrage took out several more men at once as a small flame appeared in Lucas's hand. He mused to himself that his Gale Strike had finally reached level 4. Taking down level 1 bandits was a piece of cake. One of the survivors cried out, "Who the hell did that to my friends?" The leader realized his entire group had been defeated in the blink of an eye. He prepared one last attack, screaming that he was taking the old man down with him. A massive fireball shot directly toward Ford. With no strength left to dodge, Ford sent a silent thank you to whoever had helped him. Knowing the children would live, he closed his eyes and accepted his fate. But just then, Lucas jumped in front of him to intercept the fiery attack. The youth charged directly into the fireball as Ford watched on, unable to believe his eyes. After the smoke cleared, Lucas stood there completely unharmed. "Young master," Ford called out. The bandit leader was shocked to see his fireball completely fizzle out. He frantically tried to launch another spell. "It's already over," Lucas stated calmly. With a single punch, Lucas closed the distance and slammed his fist into the bandit leader. The impact instantly defeated the man as Lucas landed on a nearby horse. Ford watched him go, asking how on earth he did that. Smiling, Lucas turned and said he supposed he just had a talent for martial arts. The older man could only call out the young master's title in awe. Suddenly, a dark mass began to surge from the ground behind them. The creature emerged, completely revealing its gruesome skeletal face. The monster commanded Lucas Ryan and Jeremy Ryan to die. Lucas simply stared at the thing in front of him. He decided he needed to defeat this monster, and fast. Jeremy leaped toward the creature, landing a powerful blow on its head. Lucas watched his companions attack. Meanwhile, elsewhere, another man slammed his fist into the ground. Energy surged through the soil from his fist as chains shot up from the earth, ensnaring a man. Back at the main fight, Lucas wondered what kind of creature they were even facing. A strange symbol manifested in the creature's eye. He questioned if that was the source controlling the undead. The monster opened its enormous maw, ready to attack. Jeremy realized that his normal attacks weren't working and decided he needed a new approach. Jeremy slammed the monster with a two-handed strike, creating an opening for Lucas to prepare his own attack. He extended his palm forward, landing a direct hit on the symbol in the monster's eye. A brilliant beam of energy tore straight through the creature in the forest. The monster was completely disintegrated by the powerful attack. Lucas stood for a moment as its silhouette faded away. Exhausted, he collapsed to the ground just as Julia called out his name. He turned to see her running toward him. Julia threw her arms around him, asking if he'd defeated all the bad guys. Jeremy just watched the scene, wondering what in the world had just happened. Suddenly, Lucas heard a noise and looked over as a horse neighed from deeper in the forest. Someone was on the horse, and tied on top of the animal was a young woman, Maya Rasta. In a nearby cave, several captured men were imprisoned. The cult's leader wondered who could have eliminated number 44, but quickly decided restoring her own power was the top priority. Back in the forest, Julia confirmed the girl's name was indeed Maya. Rasta, Lucas commented, feeling like he'd heard that family name somewhere before. Sitting next to Maya, Julia admitted she had the exact same feeling. Lucas then explained that the Rasta and Ryan families were both noble houses that lived near Daku City. That's when it finally clicked for Julia. She asked Maya how she was captured by those bandits. Maya began to recount how just a few hours earlier her carriage had been suddenly ambushed. In her memory, she recalled one of the bandits laughing menacingly. She continued explaining that her guards were defeated one after another, and her lady-in-waiting was struck down while trying to shield her. Maya explained that it didn't matter how many times she insisted she was a noble. One of the bandits just stared at her coldly. She concluded that their sole purpose seemed to be kidnapping the children of noble families. Lucas reassured her that everything was okay now and that they were all defeated. He then grew quiet for a moment. Forden approached and informed the young master that Miss Maya and Miss Julia had gone to get some rest. Lucas called him over, asking for his opinion on Maya's story. Fordon asked if he was referring to the fact that the bandits were clearly professionals. He stated that they had likely been targeting the children of nobles for some time. Lucas added that these weren't just skilled bandits, they could use magic and had a bizarre power to control the dead. Fordon looked off to the side, his expression growing serious. The young master concluded that a terrifying demon must be pulling the strings behind this entire operation. Fordon said he would report this to the master immediately. He added that if they informed the Rasta family about Maya's rescue, they would likely gain their cooperation as well. Lucas agreed, adding that he had a suggestion to help them avoid any further trouble. The next day in Daku City, Julia was surprised to learn they were canceling their plans to stay and tour the city. Lucas explained that some of yesterday's bandits might still be hiding in the city. For their own safety, it was better to head straight to the Magic Academy. He asked for her understanding, stressing that it was for both her and Maya's safety. Maya agreed with what he said. Julia and Lucas sat together inside the carriage. Lucas looked at his sister. He promised Julia he would buy whatever she wanted to eat later. Maya commented on how well the two got along, and Forden announced they had arrived in the city. Julia and her brother stuck, their heads out the carriage window. They both looked at the city around them. She was impressed by the view of the city streets. The streets were full of people and establishments. A man commented that this was the largest city after the imperial capital. Maya also looked out the window and said the place was very lively. The three observed the city together. Lucas observed the scenery. He noted that the atmosphere of that city was similar to the city where he lived in his past life. A man dressed as a clown appeared at the window and scared the girls. Lucas bought various breads and sweets for them. Maya offered one of the sweets to Julia. Music. Lucas watched the scene. Forden took them to a large gate and said he could only accompany them that far. Lucas reassured him, telling him that he would protect Julia. The girl hugged him and said she would protect him too. He patted her head and said he was counting on the genius music mage. She replied that he could leave it to her. Forden watched the scene. Maya commented that he was an interesting guy having his little sister there to protect him. The butler watched the three walk away toward the gate. Maya thought about how kind the two siblings were. Lucas also reflected that he was happy to have met them. Maya looked at him. Back to the previous night, Forden suddenly remembered something. He revealed to Lucas that Miss Maya had once been his fiancée. Music. They were very close when they were little, but the engagement was broken off after a priest declared he had no talent for magic. Allen Magic Academy is one of the Sarmina Empire's top 3 schools. Every new student has to pass an entrance exam. The results decide which of the 4 departments they'll join for their 6 years of mage training. Lucas explains to Julia that exceptional students can graduate early by passing a special certification exam. He glances away for a moment. Julia says it's a shame. She hoped to take the entrance exam with Maya. Lucas mentions that Maya already took her exam earlier with her family and is all set now. He encourages her to focus so they can join Maya as classmates. Julia agrees and asks where registration is. The young girl's presence draws attention. A bystander asks if she's really a candidate. Another comments on how young she looks, while a third praises her brother's appearance. As Julia grabs Lucas's arm, someone else remarks they wish they had a sister like her. A voice calls out to them from the crowd. The woman introduces herself as Mina, vice president of the Academy Student Council. Mina asks Julia if she had just tagged along with her brother. The girl denies it, insisting she's there to take the exam with him. Mina, music, checks Julia's application, realizing she must be the girl offered a spot in the elite class. Mina smiles faintly. She confirms the girl is Julia, from the Ryan family. Julia asks how the woman knows her name. Mina replies that she'll find out soon and starts guiding her to the registration area, momentarily leaving Lucas behind, but the girl stops her, saying her brother needs to register too. The vice president turns around, admitting she forgot. She Music asks Lucas if he's there for the martial arts department. Voices in the crowd start questioning the idea of a martial artist attending a magic academy. At Allen Academy, it's pretty common for mages to look down on martial artists. Julia reacts to the comments. The murmurs continue, comparing martial artists to nobodies. Lucas Music turns his head, stating their opinions don't matter. Mina overhears his declaration. She realizes she shouldn't have mentioned his department out loud. Just then, another voice calls out Lucas's name. Mina walks up to him, inviting him to register so they can head to the exam hall. Lucas smiles and thanks her. They arrive at a massive hall packed with candidates. Mina instructs everyone to register with a student council member and then hands out badges. With their badges in hand, they are informed that their exam numbers are stored within them. The exam has 3 parts: measuring magical potential, attribute compatibility, and power against a target. Lucas asks if the process is the same for martial arts candidates. Mina confirms that the exam is identical for everyone. Lucas shows his dissatisfaction with that explanation. He claps his hands together, saying he understands. Music. He then declares he'll show everyone the power of a martial artist and change their minds about them. At the potential measurement station, an examiner announces the start of the first test. Music. The examiner watches as Lucas approaches the gauge. Suddenly, the examiner reacts, claiming he's never seen anything like this before. It's a rare phenomenon. However, when Lucas places his hand on the gauge, his result is disappointingly low. The screen shows he'll struggle to get into even the martial arts department. He sighs, lamenting that this is happening all over again. Next up, another candidate approaches and places her hand on the gauge. 2 other candidates react in surprise at her result. Her potential is a 7 out of 10, ranking her as one of this year's top students. Lucas watches from the crowd, thinking that everyone is too easily impressed. He tells Julia not to hold back today, and she agrees. The examiner watches as Julia concentrates her power on the gauge. The device in her hands begins to radiate powerful energy. The energy, music, expands, filling the entire exam hall. The examiner announces the result is a 10, the maximum value. Her talent is considered absolutely incredible. For context, it took another student 2 entire years to reach that same level. She holds up the gauge, displaying the final result. Julia finishes the test and runs toward Lucas, calling for her brother. She gives him a big hug, asking if she did a good job. He replies that she's going to become an archmage one day. A spectator comments on the stark contrast between a genius and a talentless nobody, but is cut off by his friend. The friend advises him not to start trouble with a genius, especially over someone with 0 ability. Julia, music, shifts her stance, warning them that she won't stand for anyone mistreating her brother. For the last 3 years, all of Lucas's hard work has been for a single purpose: greater than music. Candidates are now gathered in a circular hall for the compatibility test. Elemental spirits of all different types suddenly begin appearing throughout the room. A surprised candidate points, drawing everyone's attention to Julia, who is standing in the center of the hall. Spirits of every element are beginning to gather around her. She smiles as they swirl about her, while one candidate whines that he hasn't attracted a single spirit. Someone else wondered if Julia might have perfect compatibility with every single element. Watching from the sidelines, Lucas remarked on her impressive talent. Her special ability was amplifying her own potential, which was more than enough to ace the entrance exam. An examiner announced that Julia Ryan had earned the highest compatibility score of all the candidates and offered his congratulations. Immediately, a crowd of other candidates swarmed her, showering her with praise and asking to be friends. Feeling overwhelmed, Julia ran and hugged Lucas from behind, calling out for her big brother. He turned, asking what was wrong. Hiding behind him, she asked why everyone was staring at her like that. Music. Lucas just patted her head. He explained that this is what happens when you're a genius and that she'd be getting a lot more attention from now on. He just told her to take her time and get used to it. Julia then declared that she needed to get stronger to protect him, an attitude Lucas fully supported. He also made a mental note to help build her confidence to handle all the attention. Just then he noticed two guys talking in the distance. One of them commented that Julia's talent was practically royalty level, but the idea was laughable since she was with a useless brother. The other guy chimed in that his compatibility score was probably 0, just like in the last test. Besides, all the spirits had practically recoiled in disgust the moment he set foot in the hall. The man continued mentioning that something weird also happened at the end of the second test. Music. He said that the moment Lucas left, a piece of a fire spirit just crumbled away. His friend wasn't buying it, but as luck would have it, Lucas and Julia walked right past them at that exact moment. Lucas overheard their little chat and cracked a small smirk. He then remembered what actually went down during that test. As he'd walked through the hall, the fire spirits kept their distance, being particularly hostile and even taunting him. When the test ended and he was leaving, one of them got bold and flew right at him. The spirit spat a fireball at him, so he casually picked up a small stone and flicked it, shattering the spirit's form completely. He thought to himself that a mere servant of the fire god had no business acting so cocky around him. Lucas then took Julia's hand, telling her it was time for the final test. He asked if she could snag first place in this one too. The girl replied, "Of course, as long as you don't try too hard." With a smile, he said he wouldn't get serious, since he was planning on having her protect him. They soon arrived at the magic destruction power test site, where a large metal mannequin stood waiting in the center of the arena. Another candidate was already complaining that the genius girl was probably going to take first place again. His friend scoffed, saying there was no way she could even put a scratch on the mannequin. The mannequins were made of a special metal and reinforced with defensive enchantments. They were designed to resist any attack below the curse rank. Lucas observed the targets, thinking to himself that they looked pretty tough as he clenched his fist. It was a perfect music chance to test out his new level 6 skills. He figured getting to use all this expensive equipment for free made coming to the academy worth it after all. Suddenly, someone shoved him from behind, yelling at him to stop pushing. A girl pointed a finger in his face and ordered him to get in line properly, then turned to another candidate. She griped that useless people should just get out of the way. After all, everyone knows the talentless go to the back. The guy she was talking to then glared at Lucas. This commotion caught the attention of another girl nearby, who turned and shot him a look of pure disdain. Music. She approached Lucas and Julia, then asked Julia if she was the one who got a 9.6 on the compatibility test. The girl was clearly looking down on her. Julia got a little scared and called out for her brother. Lucas stepped in to protect her as she mentioned the other girl was scary. He then asked who she was. The young woman introduced herself as Iowa Miranda, the granddaughter of Duke Miranda. The Miranda family was one of the 3 great noble houses of the Northern Empire. Not only was it a clan that had produced a legendary mage, but Lucas's own mother also belonged to that family. It made him remember his mother, Catherine. Lucas realized the girl was his cousin and asked her age. Iowa replied that she was 15. She didn't quite understand the purpose of the question. Music. Lucas warned her not to stare at him like that, revealing that they were cousins. Iowa reacted with indignation. She declared she'd never heard of any cousin and decided to humiliate him right in front of everyone. She then cast a spell directly at him. With the magic activated, she ordered him to perform a humiliating action on the spot and embarrass himself. But the spell had 0 effect on Lucas. The girl was completely perplexed by the situation. He then questioned what kind of education the Miranda family offered for her to use mental magic on a relative she just met. Iowa couldn't believe her best magic had failed. Music. He asked if she really thought she could control a martial artist with a trick like that. An examiner called for the next participant, Lucas Ryan, and he announced he had to go. Another examiner then called for Julia. Iowa pointed at Julia, warning her not to get cocky because she would be taking first place in this test. Lucas glanced over at the scoreboard. The list showed Julia Ryan in first place, followed by Iowa Miranda in second. He decided that for the sake of his own quiet life, he couldn't let Iowa take first place from Julia. Lucas then offered Julia some candy. Julia tasted it and asked what it was and if it was any good. Then he gave her a firm pat on the back to help her get it down. She coughed and called him a liar, complaining that it wasn't candy but some super bitter medicine. Lucas apologized. He explained it was a special magic potion and she would feel the effects soon. Music. He was called to enter and ran to the arena, but Julia yelled after him that she didn't believe him anymore. He walked toward the metal training dummy where the examiner was waiting. The examiner instructed participant number 5 to attack the target with his full-strength magic for the evaluation. But before starting, Lucas interrupted, stating that he couldn't use magic. He clenched his fist and asked if he could just hit the target. In the audience, a group of students started to mock him, predicting he'd just break Music his hand. One of the guys then noticed Lucas's sister was standing right next to him, and Julia had to restrain herself. She stated that she was only holding back from attacking them because her brother asked her to behave. Iowa turned to her and asked if her brother really couldn't use magic. Julia confirmed that he couldn't, but she asserted that he was still an amazing person, music, and that no one had the right to make fun of him. Her cousin observed her thinking that there was a limit to a martial artist's strength, and Julia was just being deceived. Music. Suddenly, a powerful impact echoed throughout the arena. Dust kicked up in front of the crowd as Iowa reacted to what had just happened. She could only wonder what that was. 2 minutes earlier, Lucas had asked the examiner if just one hit would be enough. The man simply replied that he didn't care how he attacked. Lucas then braced himself for an attack. His martial arts skills got a massive boost every 3 levels. His ultimate move had already gotten a huge power-up at level 3. So now that the skill hit level 6, its power was on a whole other level. He dashed forward, aiming a super fast punch right at the mannequin's head. The sheer force of the blow sent the metal mannequin flying backward. A cloud of dust billowed through the arena. The mannequin collapsed to the ground with a gaping hole in its chest. Lucas stared at the wrecked mannequin on the floor as Iowa watched him intently. She could tell his speed was comparable to high-level wind magic, and his attack packed the power of a curse rank spell. The other students were staring in shock. She realized she was the only one there who could see his true strength. Analyzing him on the screen, she concluded that he was holding back his real power. The examiner congratulated him, awarding him, music, a perfect score. Lucas offered to help clean up the busted mannequin, and just then his name appeared on the scoreboard. Music. He gave Julia a signal, and the girl immediately celebrated his result. She was just happy he'd managed to hide his true strength and avoid getting a 0. As the exams continued, most of the students paid little attention to Lucas's display of destructive music power, because everyone was captivated by Julia's rare talent. She began to gather an immense amount of power, surprising the candidates around her. She concentrated all that power into her staff. Next, a spell circle materialized at her feet, and she announced the descent of lightning. An enormous lightning bolt was conjured, crashing down from the skies. The attack slammed into the mannequin. Spectators commented that her type of magic was perfect for offense. The crowd reacted, impressed by the honor students' music. Power until one of them pointed to the arena. Julia was just sitting on the ground. Other candidates wondered if the spell's recoil was so strong that she couldn't get up. She remained on the floor, completely baffled about what just happened. The examiner announced Julia Ryan's score as 9.5 and called for the next candidate. Back with Lucas, she explained that she cast the spell like normal, but a massive lightning bolt came out of nowhere, which completely scared her. The girl continued saying that even at full strength, the lightning seemed way more active than usual. He just watched her silently for a moment. The effect was caused by the potion he gave her, but Lucas decided to keep that to himself. In this world, both mages and martial artists had their own unique techniques for creating potions. Mages dedicated themselves to brewing potions, while martial artists specialized in refining elixirs. Magic potions required a medium to be consumed, but elixirs made through refinement could be absorbed directly by the body. In the past, all sorts of elixirs were created, but with the decline of martial arts, refining them became extremely difficult. Very few martial artists in the modern era could create the mage essence elixir that had supercharged Julia's power. This was because creating that elixir required the user's refinement ability to be at level 6. Currently, the only other person capable of such a feat was the level 9 martial artist Duke Redisan. Lucas decided to keep his level 6 ability an absolute secret to avoid any trouble. Time music passed outside the academy. While they were waiting on a bench, Julia asked if it was over yet. Lucas replied that they just needed to wait for the class assignments to be posted. A voice then called out for Julia and Lucas. Mina approached them, waving from near a bulletin board. Lucas stood up and asked what she was doing there. She explained she was there to post the class assignments and congratulated them on snagging first place. Julia was ecstatic to hear she'd placed first in the elite class. Lucas congratulated her, and they celebrated together since he had also made it into the elite class. Mina then asked Julia which department she wanted to join next year, completely confusing her. Mina explained that the academy has 5 different departments. All students are assigned to one of them after their first year. Julia figured that based on her attribute, she would probably end up in the wind department. Mina then grabbed her excitedly, saying she'd be waiting for her in the wind department. Julia happily agreed. Lucas noted that Mina was already scouting for new members, as she offered to walk Julia to the girls' dormitory. Julia said goodbye to her brother, promising to see him later. Lucas waved music goodbye, asking Mina to look after his sister before he headed off to the martial arts department. Students were buzzing, music, that the class assignments were posted, and just as expected, Julia Ryan was in first place. One student commented that the other freshmen were just background characters to make the genius shine. The final ranking board showed Julia Ryan at the top of the elite class. Meanwhile, Ia swore that one day she would be the one to take first place from Lucas and Julia. Lucas already knew the martial arts department wasn't exactly a top priority, but he still wondered if anyone could actually live in a building that looked like it was about to collapse. Still, a place like that would probably be quite enough for the peaceful school life he was hoping for. A guy walked up to him asking if he was Lucas, the music department's top-ranked student. He introduced himself as Kai Toy from the same department and gave a friendly greeting. Lucas just ignored him and headed for the registration desk. As he was signing the papers, Kai started praising him for launching the training dummy into the air, but Lucas, music, just brushed it off his luck. An older man handed him a key, telling him his room was on the second floor. Seeing the key was for room 205, Kai cheered that they were going to be roommates. The two of them walked down a rundown hallway searching for their room. Kai and Lucas were surprised to open the door and find someone else already inside. The guy introduced himself as Sharp and his friend as Collins. He cheerfully announced they'd all be roommates from now on. Kai's jaw dropped at the news. Music. On top of that, their room was in terrible condition. Kai couldn't believe it, asking what kind of room this was even supposed to be. He reeled back in disgust, exclaiming that the place was worse than a pigsty. Then a spider sent him jumping, and he asked Lucas if he was really going to stay in such a filthy room. Lucas just silently watched his over-the-top reaction. Music Kai then pulled out a coin. He held it up, offering it as a reward to whoever cleaned the room. As Sharp and Collins scrambled to clean Lucas' music, just watch the scene unfold. Kai approached and tried to reassure him, saying their living conditions were bound to improve. Just then, an older man knocked on the door, announcing he was there to deliver their uniforms. He informed them that the entrance ceremony was about to start in the main hall, so they needed to get changed and head over right away. Kai took one look at the uniforms and reacted with indignation, complaining he'd look like a beggar if he wore them. The man explained that the school had a request system for improving student conditions. Music. He even suggested that a successful request could get the uniforms changed. Armed with this new information, Kai immediately hurried off to the hall. They arrived at the academy's main hall, and Lucas made his way across the floor. Sporting his new uniform, he stepped into the grand hall and took in the impressive architecture. His roommates were just as impressed, though Kai boasted it was nothing compared to his family's estate. Lucas scanned the crowd for Julia. Kai pointed out that the elite class had seats right at the front. Sure enough, she was sitting in the first row, and that elite class uniform was on another level. Kai warned him that their department's seats were way in the back, the furthest from the stage. Lucas decided against going closer, admitting the uniform looked better on Julia anyway. One of the students nearby complained that the seats were too far away, wondering aloud if the school was discriminating against the martial arts department. Lucas settled into his seat, as a girl next to him kept glancing over. Suddenly, the candles on stage burst into flame and a flower of fire materialized in someone's hand. Floating onto the stage with his level 6 ability, he announced that new students should feel honored to be there. He continued his speech, introducing himself as the student council president. Back on the ground, Theodore Powell announced he would be explaining the school's point system. Gasps and whispers erupted from the female students in the audience, calling him a genius. Lucas watched him silently from his seat in the back of the hall. Theodore, music, explained that at Allen Magic Academy, the point system was the foundation for almost everything. He detailed how magical abilities, rare books tamed, music, beasts, and even private lessons from great masters could all be acquired with points. There were many ways to earn points, but manual labor paid next to nothing. It was far more efficient to earn points by joining department events or mentoring freshmen. A light bulb went off for Lucas. Now he understood why Mina had been so helpful. Theodore concluded by saying that becoming music, a student council member guaranteed a steady income of points every month. Lucas listened intently. Music. Theodore continued, revealing a riskier option: monster hunting. He explained that behind the school lay the magical beast mountain range where students could hunt for points. Hearing the name of that mountain range, Lucas couldn't help but clench his fist. A smile spread across his face as he realized it was the perfect training ground for him. A few hours later, night fell over the academy dorms. Inside one of the rooms, a young man was fast asleep in his bed. Incense burned slowly. Music, its calming scent, keeping the room's occupants in a deep slumber. Lucas Ryan slipped out of the room. The tranquility incense was his handiwork, a little trick to ensure he could sneak off to the home of the magical beasts. He recalled that the martial arts department building was located at the very back of the campus. So Lucas figured the magical beast territory was just on the other side of the wall. Without a second thought, he leaped over it. The boy landed gracefully on the other side, now deep in the wild territory. Lucas pressed on through the forest with several creatures hot on his heels. He vaulted into the air and delivered a powerful downward kick to a monster that lunged at him. His foot music connected squarely with the creature's head. The monster's body slammed into the ground, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and leaving a small crater where it lay motionless. The sheer force of the blow had snapped one of the monster's horns clean off. From his perch in a tree, Lucas identified the creature as a giant black-horned toad. Holding the horn, Lucas mused that because they were poisonous, their parts were valuable for magic potions and should be worth a good chunk of points. He remembered hearing that the Allen Magic Academy archives held some legendary martial arts manuals. Gazing at the mountains, the boy knew he didn't have much time and needed to pinpoint the monster's locations first. Then he covered one eye to activate his ability. His perception instantly expanded over a huge area of the forest. A level 1 giant rat opened its jaws to attack him, but Lucas dropped it with one hit and told the creature to take a nap. Next, he clocked a level 2-eyed bat and dodged an attack from a level 3 magic-crested panther. Small explosions echoed all throughout the forest. Satisfied, Lucas remarked that he'd gotten some great results with materials for refining elixirs and others he could trade for points. While dragging a heavy sack, he realized the area had grown far too quiet. He touched the ground and noticed there were almost no traces of other magical beasts. Lucas wondered if that meant a powerful creature was living nearby. Then Lucas knelt to concentrate, feeling the area around him. He sensed a presence coming from a trail in the forest. Lucas found the entrance to a dark cave. A dark aura was seeping from inside the opening. A snarling wolf with glowing eyes then revealed itself in the darkness. With a smile, Lucas said he'd found it. He leaped through the trees, realizing the creature a kilometer away had also noticed him. The young man left his sack of items at the cave's entrance. Then he stepped forward, entering the creature's lair. A huge level 6 fire and ice wolf emerged, snarling at him. The creature stared at the boy with its intimidating eyes. Lucas figured that since it was a wolf, it only made sense for it to be so territorial. The beast charged with its mouth open to attack, but with a clenched fist, he invited it to come at him. Lucas then landed a punch on the wolf's paw, and the creature retaliated with a powerful blast of ice. Lucas blocked the attack, his fist now covered in ice. The wolf retreated, surprised by the unexpected defense. He then shattered the ice and landed a direct punch right on the creature's face. With the wolf stunned, Lucas leaped back holding a piece of ice. The beast staggered and hit the cave wall, and Lucas stood over the fallen creature. He lamented that if he had trained more, he would have caused a lot more damage. Lucas provoked it to get up, saying the fight wasn't over yet. The wolf rose again and concentrated a sphere of fire in its mouth. Then it fired an immense blast of flames. The fiery explosion consumed the entire surrounding area. Amidst the flames, the creature stood its ground. The wolf howled to the sky, releasing its fury. But Lucas appeared right beside it, completely unharmed by the attack. The boy prepared another blow as the beast stared at him and then landed a powerful punch to the wolf's stomach. The impact of the blow left the creature stunned. The creature was thrown forcefully against the cave wall. Then the wolf fell to the ground, finally defeated. Lucas watched the fallen animal and remarked on its rare ability to freely control fire and ice. Even wounded, the wolf glared at him. The creature's eye revealed a very unusual pattern. With his eyes shining in the dim light, Lucas stated that this was an extremely rare magical beast. Lucas approaches the wolf. The beast unleashes a simultaneous blast of fire and ice from its maw. He stares down the beast's dual elemental attack. 2 blasts of raw power hurtle toward him. Lucas spots steam rising where the opposing elements collide. A swift attack grazes him. Taking the opportunity, the wolf makes a break for it. The beast bolts for the cave exit, but Lucas leaps after it, shouting that it's not getting away that easily. He lunges forward and just barely manages to snag the wolf's tail. With a mighty spin, he hurls the creature through the air. Clutching a tuft of fur, Lucas smirks that fighting a giant magical beast is great practice and has to be worth a ton of experience points. But then a look of shock flashes across his face. Out of nowhere, another identical wolf appears and pounces on the one he was just fighting. Lucas jumps back, narrowly dodging the attack. One wolf blasts a torrent of flames at him, while the other attacks from above. The first wolf doubles down, intensifying its fire attack. Lucas dives to the ground, yelling at them to knock it off, before slamming his fist into the earth, creating a massive shockwave. The sheer force of the impact makes his clenched fist tremble. The energy from the blow ripples through the entire cave. The 2 wolves manage to pin him down, and he wonders if this is how it all ends. He figures he has no choice but to use his trump card, but just then two enormous paws slam down right where he was standing. He looks up to see the new threat. An even bigger wolf lands in front of him, dropping a fire core and an ice core onto the ground. Lucas stares, wondering if those are actually beast cores. In this world, certain magical beasts are born with a core that holds all of their power. If a human infuses their vital energy into that core, the creature becomes their tamed beast. Realizing what this means, Lucas asks the wolf if it wants to become his servant. Smiling, Lucas accepts the offer, thinking to himself what an unexpected windfall this is. Even most mages don't have a level 6 tamed beast, but then again, this wolf doesn't seem like the sharpest tool in the shed. Normally, a proud magical beast would never submit to a mere human. With that settled, Lucas begins the taming ritual. He channels a bit of his energy into the two cores and offers them to the giant wolf. The wolf absorbs the cores right into its body, and a moment later, a startled Lucas hears a voice in his head call him Master. He whips his head around, trying to find where the voice came from. The wolf reveals that it was him, and Lucas realizes he can understand the creature telepathically. Lucas calls him a good boy and decides to name him Ool, a name the beast happily accepts. He immediately asks if this territory is his now, and more importantly, if there's any good loot from its past hunts. With a determined glint in its eye, the wolf looks off to the side. Ool affectionately nuzzles its snout against Lucas's face. Ool motions for him to follow it to the treasure trove, and Lucas can't help but praise how smart his new companion is. The new partners head deeper into the cave, passing by strange creatures sleeping upside down from the ceiling. The stench is so awful that Lucas has to plug his nose. They find a massive pile of loot containing the hide of a level 6 magical beast, the skeletal remains of an ancient creature, and even a stash of precious gems. He's floored. It's a literal treasure trove, but Ool corrects him, explaining that this isn't his real treasure. Ool clarifies that the real treasure for his master are the items left behind by unfortunate adventurers. Then the wolf leads him to an impressive collection of beast cores, all level 3 or higher, including 2 level 6 cores. Ool explains that it already ate all the cores with water and fire attributes for itself. As the narrator reminds us, for a beast to level up, it has to consume a core from another beast of an equal or higher level. That means Ool had to take down at least 2 opponents just as powerful as he is. Lucas praises him for a job well done and offers him a reward. The wolf gives it a sniff and declares it smells delicious. After eating it, Oo seems completely energized. Lucas explains that it's a healing potion that even works on magical beasts, then tasks him with recovering and guarding the treasure. O is thrilled to accept his very first mission. Standing next to all, Lucas announces it's time for the next phase. A subtle smile plays on his lips. The next morning, sunlight streams down on the Academy's imposing classroom building. Lucas and Sharp walk into the classroom to find Iowa Miranda already seated. Lucas lets out a yawn, remarking that even after pulling an all-nighter, he isn't tired at all thanks to the sleep incense. Music? He remembers trying to count his treasure, but all just wouldn't leave him alone. The clock on the wall shows that class is about to start. The martial arts department classroom is still nearly empty. Sharp wonders where their teacher is and why no one else has shown up. Kai Troy guesses the administration might have forgotten to assign them a teacher, but Lucas doubts it. The sound of shuffling footsteps echoes from the hall. A man stumbles in, kicks a bottle out of his way, and groans about his hangover. Sharp stares at the spectacle, but Lucas keeps a straight face. The newcomer leans against the doorframe and introduces himself as Shigart, the head of the martial arts department, before announcing that class has begun. Lucas observes him in silence as Shigart scrawls his name on the chalkboard. He then turns to the class holding up a small book. Kai Taroi glares at the teacher, demanding to know if this guy is really their professor, since he definitely doesn't look the part. In a flash, Lucas strikes him. Kai plops back down in his seat, completely stunned. The swift movement brings a smile to Lucas's face. The professor then announces he's taking attendance. He warns them that no one leaves without permission. He calls out for Tishi, who answers, "Here, Lucas is next." The young man simply raises his hand, confirming he's present. After Collins responds, Sigurd calls for Sharp, who remains silent. The professor snaps the book shut and declares everyone present. Sigurd then claims he forgot to bring the textbooks. He appoints Music Tishi as the class representative and tells her to go get them. The girl points to herself, completely baffled. The professor confirms that yes, he means her. Kai Taroi shoots up from his seat, Music, protesting that the class rep should be chosen fairly. He brags that, with his family background and skills, he's obviously the best choice. Music. Suddenly something smacks him right in the face. Shigart gestures with his hand, reminding Kai that he already gave him a warning. He repeats, no talking without permission. He tells Tishi to pass out the books for self-study and then promptly leaves the music room. The young woman realizes this could be her chance to change her destiny. Kai starts complaining about the professor, while Lucas notes that there's definitely something strange about the man. Kai music suggests they should report him to the administration. Meanwhile, Lucas is observing Sigurd's walk, noticing the subtle signs of an old injury. Lucas can't help but wonder how strong the professor was before his injury. He then tells Kai he never agreed to file a complaint. Kai questions why he's acting this way. A few hours later outside the cafeteria, Lucas thinks to himself that having a strong, mysterious teacher certainly makes things more interesting. Elsewhere, Kai bumps into a classmate and starts griping that they only had music, self-study all day because of that professor. He keeps on ranting about the master's irresponsibility until Julia calls out to him, "Big brother, Sarari Winarawalo Kososiatino to Butter." Lucas pats her head, asking how her first class was. Julia says her teacher, Miss Linda, is super cool and encouraged her to run for class representative next week. Greater than music. She asks if the martial arts department has chosen a representative yet and if it was him. Smiling, Lucas replies it wasn't him and invites them to lunch, mentioning he's heard the food is good. Julia runs ahead, excitedly leaving Kai behind, yelling for them to wait up. At Allen Magic Academy, even meals are part of the point exchange system. Music. New students can only exchange cash for points once. The elite class dishes look appetizing. Julia tries the food and tells her big brother to eat up. Kai watches silently, wiping music his face. He complains. They both paid 1 coin, but the elite class got 100 points, while the martial arts department only got 10. A staff member tells him to leave if he has a problem. Kai realizes even the staff openly discriminate against martial arts students. Music. She asserts that untalented students must work hard and save points. Kai feels like he's lost his rights just by enrolling here. Julia offers Kai a plate of food. Touched, he calls her a sweet, gentle music girl. Lucas notes his classmate as being a bit dramatic. As Kai sits down near Lucas, Maya Rasta approaches their table. Smiling, she greets Lucas and Julia, saying they meet again. Julia invites Maya to join them, but Maya politely declines, saying she has already eaten. Instead, she offers cookies she baked to thank them for their help the other day. The little girl accepts the sweets with a smile. Lucas tries a cookie and compliments Maya, saying she's a great cook. Maya smiles at the compliment. Kai leans over to Lucas and asks for a cookie. He compliments Music the cookie and introduces himself as Kai as well. Maya Rasta introduces herself in return. Lucas just watches the interaction. Julia waves goodbye as Maya walks away from the table. Lucas comments that the cafeteria is a terrible place to meet people. Mina approaches their table and asks if the food is good, greeting Lucas shyly. Suddenly, Theodore Palomel descends from upstairs using fire magic. The boy shows off floating through the cafeteria. Music. After landing, Theodore sits on a bench to rest. Lucas eats a cookie. Remembering the entrance ceremony, he looks to the side, noticing something. Music. He watches Professor Sigurd walking away, drinking from a bottle. The man takes another swig, then he leaves the cafeteria and walks across the academy grounds. Shortly after, Sigurd opens a door. Inside the room, 2 men comment that he's the last to arrive again. One says he thought taking over the martial arts department would straighten him out. The other replies, "You can't blame him after what happened." Now seated at the meeting table, Sigurd stretches. A blonde woman stares at him from across the room. She watches him with a serious expression. Someone taps their fingers on the table to get attention. With everyone gathered, the meeting finally begins. An older man announces the agenda, the magical music beast taming tournament. It's an annual tradition in the Carmina Empire for Allen Magic Academy freshmen to participate. An instructor reports they have already prepared over 2,000 level 1 magical beasts for the event. It will be held in 6 days. Just like every year, one professor suggests the martial arts students should just sit it out. It would be a waste of time. He slams his hand on the table, but music. Sigurd stands up and objects. The professor justifies himself, saying he was only thinking of the students. Music, an instructor interrupts to agree with Mr. Sigurd. She asserts that as long as they are freshmen, martial arts students must be required to participate. Another teacher agrees, stating all students should be treated equally. The man wonders why there are still professors who side with Sigurd, especially Linda. Sigurd and the instructor stare down the professor. He yields music to their insistence, but claims the students will just end up scared. An older man declares it decided. The martial arts department will participate. The dissenting professor leaves the room. Another instructor approaches Linda, asking if she's sure about this. He explains that while martial arts require real combat, the taming tournament might be too harsh for them. Linda just offers a faint smile. She remembers something someone told her long ago. Sigurd asserts that a coward cannot call themselves a martial artist. Any music student who refuses to participate in the tournament will have to leave the department. It is announced that the magical beast taming tournament will be held in 6 days. Nenurush Wishat music. The professor informs the class that after the lesson they will have practical combat training so everyone can defeat a magical beast. Kaitu questions the point of participating. The tournament is just to choose a class rep, and they already have one. The professor tells the student to be quiet. Class is starting. Lucas Music rests his chin on his hand, looking away. Outside, the students begin training. During training, a female student is shoved against a wooden pillar. Tishi readies her combat stance. One student comments to another that everyone passed the entrance exam, so they aren't that bad. Tishi attacks with a kick that kicks up the dirt. Lucas dodges a classmate's attack, sending the attacker stumbling backward. Chugart raises a bottle and announces it's late, ending the day's training. Kai sits on the ground saying it's finally over. Collins approaches with Sharp telling him he'll bring his food later. Kai asks if he made another deal. He explains he traded a coin for food. Sharp asks why he wasn't informed about such a good deal. Collins apologizes and promises Sharp he can have the next one, which Sharp readily accepts. Lucas watches their interaction. Kai approaches Lucas asking music. If he's not very bright, he puts his arm around Lucas, offering to teach him for free hiking. Lucas smiles and thanks him for the offer, but declines. Kai then remembers Lucas has a sister in the elite class and doesn't need to worry about points. Later that night, Lucas reflects that Kai got it all wrong. He asserts that even without Julia, he doesn't worry about food. Lucas wipes his mouth. Nature's bounty is right here. He prepares to cook a large piece of meat. The meat roasts slowly over a campfire. Sitting by the fire, he thinks he could use his dinner time for training if he didn't have to take Julia home. He remembers how the vice president Mina tried to get close to Julia today. He can't let his guard down. He decides that if she has the slightest bad intention, he will stop her. Oo's tail wags behind him, making him turn. Ool appears and watches the roasting meat. Lucas offers the meat to Ool, telling him to eat up. Ool proceeds to devour the meal. Lucas then warns him that after eating, Ool will have to help him train. He promises it will be a perfectly safe workout. Their training takes place in the forest. Meanwhile, at the Ryan family estate, a woman sits alone on a balcony at night when Holt approaches from behind. He asks if she's thinking about the children again, and she confirms that she is. He comments that their classes have probably started by now. Holt suggests that she should go visit them if she misses them so much. He offers to take her since he needs to pass through Daku City for work anyway. She thanks him for the kind offer, expressing her happiness at finally being able to see the children. Over at Count Grindo's estate, several hooded figures gather in a grand hall.